All right, fam, welcome back. Listen, today we're going to be doing a deep dive into something that every single one of us deals with, and it's whether we realize it or not, and that is our energy. Specifically, we're going to be going into breaking down carbs and fats. Now, before we even get started, I want to remind all of you of something. I want you to channel your inner Bruce from Finding Nemo when he said, fish are friends, not food. I want you to start looking and having this mantra that food is fuel. And just like any engine in a car, your body runs on fuel. But the mistake that most people make is they don't even know what fuel they're putting in the tank. So today, the goal isn't just to dump a bunch of information on you. I want you to walk away with an understanding that carbs and fats, you get it so well that you could explain them to your kids, your spouse. You could talk about them to your training partner. Because if you can't explain this, at the end of the day, you can't own it. Now, let's start with our protein recap. Last week, we talked about protein, and protein is the bricks and the mortar of your body. Protein builds and literally repairs and keeps the entire structure strong. Every part of your body is made up of different combinations of amino acids, and so here's the deal. Protein is important, it is king, but it's not your primary fuel source. When it comes to energy, what the body can actually do when you built it and what keeps you alive and moving, it's mostly carbs and fats. Between the two, they account for 85 to 95% of your total energy use every single day. And that's huge. So the real question is going to come down to this. If carbs and fats run the show, do you actually understand how they work? Because most people don't. And that is why diets fail. That's why we have energy crashes. That's why people spin their wheels in the gym. So let's start with what exactly are carbohydrates? Carbohydrates are going to be basically your sugars, your starches, your fibers. Your body's going to break them down into glucose. And this is going to be important when we talk about insulin spikes because glucose, that's your blood sugar. Glucose can be used immediately for energy, or it can be stored in your body in the form of glycogen. Now, glycogen, I want you to think about it kind of like your body's battery pack. And we can store it. Muscles can store about 300 to 600 grams, and meanwhile, our liver can store about another 80 to 110 grams. But that's it. Once we fill those tanks up, the excess is going to get stored as fat. Now, not all carbs are created equal. You got to understand that you got simple sugars. You're going to think things like a quick hit. This is going to be your fruit, your honey, your milk. Then you've got starches. These are going to be longer chains, and they're going to be things like rice, potatoes, and bread. Lastly, everybody's heard of fiber. And fiber, your body can't digest it, but it keeps your gut moving. It will help you feel full. So if you're one of those people that has a problem with satiety, you can add fiber into it, and it's going to help lower your cholesterol. A practical way for us to think about this is that simple carbs are like lighting a match. They're a quick flame. It burns out very, very fast. A complex carb is like putting wood on the fire. It takes a bit to catch, but it's going to burn longer. It's going to keep you warm overnight. And then fiber is like your fireplace screen. It doesn't burn, but it keeps that fire safe and contained and under control. Another thing that people love to talk about is the glycemic index, but they also leave out glycemic load. So when we're talking about blood sugar, because this is where a lot of people get confused, the glycemic index is going to measure how fast a food spikes your blood sugar. So if you eat 50 grams of it. So white bread, for example, spikes your blood sugar faster than something like lemons. But glycemic load also factors in the portion size. And this is important because a carrot technically has a high GI, but you have to eat like 5 pounds of them for it to matter. So the practical lesson is we're not going to obsess over the GI charts. We're going to pay attention also to what and how much we're eating. And more importantly, when are you eating it? Carb recommendations are varied and wide across the spectrum. And obviously, it's going to depend on you and what your goal is. And that always comes into the question. So how much do I need? Well, that's going to depend on you and the diet modality and the training that you're under. If you're doing keto, for example, you're under 20 grams a day. If you're an endurance athlete, you might be as high as 13 grams per kilogram of body weight. That's a lot of carbs. But for most of us, we're going to land somewhere between in the middle. About 45 to 65% of our calories are going to come from our carbohydrate and fat sources. Here's the anchor point. The more anaerobic you're training, the more lifting, sprinting, explosive work you do, the more carbs your body can actually handle without an issue. It's very important for you to understand we can't vilify this. Carbs aren't bad. They're simply tools, and like any tool, you got to know when to use them. Now let's transition and jump into fats. Fats is for so many years. I remember growing up, it was starting to be this war on fat, and everybody thought fat was the enemy. Low-fat diets, fat-free everything. But the truth, it's not the villain. In fact, fat is a fuel source, a hormone builder, and a protector. Your body stores fat in adipose tissue, in the liver, and in the muscles. It circulates it in your blood, bound to proteins. Well, what are these functions? Long, steady energy sources, hormone production, our sexual hormones, testosterone, estrogen, our stress hormones, cortisol, these all rely on fat. Fat also protects and maintains the cell membrane. So imagine if I have a hoodie on and it's got a lot of holes in it, it's not going to keep me warm. It supports your nervous system. It provides essential fatty acids like omega-3 and omega-6 that your body simply can't make on its own. Now, just like carbs, not all fats are equal. Saturated fats are mostly animal sources, solid at room temperature, and they provide cholesterol, which isn't evil. It's, again, a building block. Unsaturated fats, oils, nuts, seeds, and fish. Omega-3, anti-inflammatory. It opens up blood vessels, and it's good for recovery. Omega-6 is pro-inflammatory. It helps healing, clotting, but in excess, it can drive pain and inflammation. Trans fats are man-made. These hydrogenated oils, these are trash. We got to avoid them like a plague. So when we look at fat recommendations, the question becomes, how much fat do you need? Well, somewhere between 0.5 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. Or, for most of you out there, 20% of your total calories. If you're training less explosively, you can rely more on fat. If your hormones are in the gutter, you may need to bump that fat and cholesterol intake. The bottom line is this. Fat is not something to fear, it's something to leverage. When we look at the big picture and we say carbs versus fats, how do we bring it all together? We now understand that carbs and fats are both energy, but they serve very different purposes. A lot of people like to talk about carbs as sprinting fuel, your jet fuel. It's quick, it's powerful, partly because there's 4 calories per gram of carb versus 9 calories per gram of fat. Fat, because it's going to take longer to break down, it is a marathon fuel. It's steady, it's endless, but your body's not going to use it under duress. It's not its preferred source. In fact, your body has enough fat on it to run 31 marathons, even lean people. That's how powerful fat is as an energy source. But as a coach, it's our job to prescribe when to eat them wisely. So what you want to do is we want to figure out what your maintenance calories are. Then once we know that, we need to lock in protein first. It's the building block. Protein is key. We're going to tailor our carbs to based on your activity demands. And then we're going to fill in fat for hormones, recovery, and sustainability. That's the formula. It's simple, it's effective, and it's repeatable. So when you are looking about what do I need to put on my plate, start thinking about those 3 things as you build it out. And once you do that, you'll start to realize this isn't some magical witchcraft. It's a very easy to understand science and math. And when your numbers add up, your results will show up. If you have any questions, cares, comments, concerns, leave them below. I'll be happy to answer them. If you got anything out of this and you want more information, go ahead, hit that like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, keep living your life. Head down, horns up. Salute.